Hello Cheeseheads, welcome to a live video with myself and HG. The dust has settled, it's been a few days and we're kind of feeling, I don't know, maybe a bit sanguine about it now, maybe not. I'm still a bit depressed about the whole situation, as I'm sure many Spurs fans are. But we're going to just have a little chat about the result the other night, where we are, and then focus on the game tomorrow, because at the end of the day there's still plenty of football to play. So HG, people were blaming Jose, they're blaming the chairman, they're blaming the players, and then Lloris came out and a really interesting interview that he gave, where he kind of questioned some of the fringe players and their attitude, and kind of hinted that might be disrupting things, and I just didn't really understand how that affected the game itself, because the only players that I could really see in there that you could be talking about were Winks, Dele, maybe Sissoko, because they're the players that have not really played much this season, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the players who haven't played, you have to look at Dele. I mean, Dele is the one, especially who I think he's still under 1,000 minutes for the season. Pretty much didn't play at all between October and December, just a couple of cup games.
Yeah.
So he's the major one. He was the one who was the scapegoat, let's say, for the first 3 months of the season when we were, let's face it, we were winning more games than we were losing. So you'd have to look at Dele. He did play against Dinamo on Thursday night, and he didn't play particularly well, not like anyone did. But it just seemed a very, very strange time to come out and say the things that Hugo did, because he doesn't seem to be interviewed that much anyway, despite being club captain. It's always someone that seems to be put in front of the cameras, and he doesn't seem to do many of the press conferences when we go into Europe. It's usually Ben Davies or someone who's much more Europa League friendly, let's say.
Yeah.
But it was a bit odd because I don't know. Like, I'm happy that it was said because I believe a lot of it. But the question is, why was it said then, and why hasn't this been dealt with before? Because if there are cliques within the squad, then we should be stopping that from happening. We should be integrating people. We should be trying to get them to be friends with one another. Like, you can't have groups of 4 or 5 against each other, and that in itself is I think the biggest issue.
I think I agree, but I made this comment on Twitter. I've avoided social media as much as I can, to be honest. But I did make the comment that if there's problems within the squad and motivation of fringe players is an issue, then again, doesn't that fall back on the manager?
Yeah, and don't pick them. I mean, this is it. Like, I understand we can't play the same players in every game, but we saw with Pochettino. Pochettino had a massive squad when he took over, and he realised who the bad eggs were, and that was that. They were gone. And yeah, okay, it might have been, 4 or 5 players at the time, and none of them were particularly first teamers, but it gave youngsters like Bentaleb and Mason a chance to play a whole season, which they probably wouldn't have done anyway. So you have to think with Jose, we've got a large squad. So unless it's 8 or 9 players that we're talking about, it could have been possible for him to just move them to one side, like he did with Rose, like he did with Dele. So he's tried it before. But for Dele to be, almost sent back into the fold, to me makes me think that he wasn't one of the problems. It makes there's so little logic to it, really. If he was an issue, then there was no reason to really bring him back, because we've had loads of options in those areas with Dele. If he was, I don't know. Like, none of it seems to make much sense. But I agree with you that if you manage 2 groups that don't like each other, and you have to figure a way out that can make that work, and you have to do that. And clearly, with the results being the way they have been, Mourinho has struggled.
Yeah. It was also interesting, Jose's post-match comments. You can tell that he instantly thinks about what he's going to say and how he's going to say it. And he kind of, as much as he tried to say we, as in trying to take some responsibility for it, he was really saying that he was sad that he couldn't motivate players, it seemed like, or he was sad that he didn't have the right influence on the team in order to get them to perform. But to me, that just, I don't know. You're basically saying I can't do my job in a certain respect, aren't you?
I think there's a lot of it is to do with the character of the players. I mean, we know that Mourinho has talked about mentality and trying to instill the mentality that he thinks is necessary to win. Now, that's easy to say when you've got the best players, which Mourinho has mostly had for his entire managerial career. You can look at a squad of 20 players and think, right, 15 or 16 have the right mentality. They are going to be the main guys, and everyone else can come in and play the odd game here or there. I mean, he's obviously fallen out with very good players before because he felt the mentality. But I think with Spurs is that as much as we might like to believe that we've got that level of player, I don't think we do. We looked at, I mean, I think if you look at the team that started the game against Dinamo, there's maybe three, possibly four, what I would say to be first teamers, like people who would play in your best 11. It was only three or four that started the game. So I can understand Mourinho being a bit upset, but when you come out at the end of the game and say that the players were unprofessional and that they were half-hearted, and yet you yourself have picked an 11 that could basically be described as being unprofessional and half-hearted, you've got nowhere to go. He spent most of the year bemoaning players' mistakes and then wonders why they're not playing for him. I don't. Yeah, look, I'm no managerial genius, but I would always think that a manager's job is to make sure that the players are fully motivated to play for you and to play for the club. I don't care about the finance. How much someone earns is irrelevant to me. But if we're paying players ridiculous sums of money and they can't be asked, then you don't pick them. It's that simple. If they want to be, it might suck for the club that they're paying 100 grand a week, 200 grand a week to someone who's not playing. But if he's done that with Delhi at the start of the season, you can continue to do that. And if it is half the squad that can't be asked, then you start to think, well, okay, who built the squad? I fail to believe, considering how few injuries we've had this season, I fail to believe that we didn't have 14 or 15 motivated players because, again, even if you hate the manager, glory is going to motivate you. The chance of a medal or a trophy is going to motivate you. And if you can't get yourself up for a game that really we should have gone for, and we should have won, all we needed was one goal, then I don't know. It's all so confusing. Like, I agree with you. A lot of it does come back to Mourinho. You have to think that, I think there's a lot of players that fans think are probably not good enough.
Yeah.
But where is that line? What makes someone good enough? Is it mentality? Is it skill? Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows right now.
I mean, I agree. I don't think we've got an elite squad. I don't think we'd be challenging for the title with the players we've got at the moment. Top four is a stretch, but it's the argument is always, I think they're better than they've been playing under Jose. I think that's just it. And it feels like, having played the tactics we played for so far this season, I feel like players are just kind of a bit fed up themselves. You remember the team spirit a few years back when they were all playing Uno and having jokes and stuff, and there was loads of social media stuff, loads of camaraderie. That doesn't really seem to be there as much now. I don't know.
It clearly helps when you win. I mean,
there is that.
Right? Like if the team keeps on losing and we're throwing 11 different players together, or we're trying different formations or different tactics, and we still keep on losing, it's going to be quite easy to wonder why. And most players are not going to think it's themselves. I mean, I think that's fair to say that there's certainly 3 or 4 players that we think, okay, we know are always going to give everything. They can't be blamed. But everyone else is kind of pointing the finger at each other, saying, well, you should have done this, or you could have done that. We've gone from a situation where Lucas and Lamela weren't anywhere near the first team, really, because we had other options. And now the two of them seem to start a lot of games. Is that because of form? Is that because of cliques? Is it because Jose has changed his mind on how he wants to play? It could be all of them, really. But I don't think any of us look at the team that is picked and think, this is the right one for whatever situation we have in front of us. I know that Paul from the pod, Paul Muir, before the game on Thursday, looked at the 11 and had a bad feeling about it. I felt the same. You want to see, at least what I want to see, if you have a squad of good players, which I do feel like we have, you have to say, right, 6 or 7 of every 11 are going to be first teamers. It doesn't have to be the same 6 or 7, but you need 6 or 7 that are like solid, they're going to be good. And then everyone else, you can decide whether it's fullbacks, whether it's wingers, whoever you want to change, if it's one centre half or one of the midfield pair, but you have to make those changes to keep everyone fresh and to keep everyone motivated.
Yeah.
Like we saw in the documentary, Danny Rose came out and basically said, it doesn't matter what we do in training, the same people are getting picked, right? And I can understand that being frustrating. Like, again, we've always said that Danny Rose has come out and said things in the wrong way, But everything that he's talked about, everything that Trippier mentioned after he was sold, like there's obviously something to this, and obviously click-based. But where are the clicks coming from? I didn't think that. I mean, it sounds awful. Outside of our, French Africans, the Dombele and the Sissoko and the Aurier and like that you can see as being a very tight group, but I don't quite know who everyone else would be tight with.
No.
I feel like that's the only real cultural link, and I can understand because I mean, logically you want people like Aurier and Sissoko to make Dombele happy. He's the club's record signing. Like you want him to settle as quickly as possible, but yeah, how much it goes past that, you just don't know.
So we've had some comments. This guy's got the most Irish name in the world. I'm not even going to attempt to say it. But Dathy, anyway, that doesn't sound like a name. About 6 to 8 players need to be shipped out before the start of the season. I hate Jose's style, but the owners needed to back him by giving him 150 million a loan just to get the defence he wanted. Now, I've seen a few comments on social media about how Levy basically decided to get in a top manager rather than getting in top players for Poch. But you look at the players that the squad needed an overhaul. But look, Poch's season, we got Lo Celso and Dombele. Cess, all right, he's gone off, but that's another fullback. Since then, we've got 2 new fullbacks. We've got a centre back. We've got who else? Oh yeah, Højbjerg in the middle. So that's 3 centre midfielders. We've got Bale in. We've got who else? Bergwijn, and we've got a replacement striker. He's talking about 8 players there. That's a third of a squad that's been replaced. So I'm not sure I buy it. Like, what does Jose need to do? Completely revamp the entire squad, apart from Son and Kane, basically.
I mean, this is it. Let's say you look at the players. Like we all knew that Højbjerg was needed, regardless of anyone leaving. We needed someone in the middle of the park, and he's been a great signing. Right? He may not be playing as well as he did at the start of the season, but he's been a great signing. You look at the fullbacks. Doherty has never really fit. Was that someone that we really wanted, or was that Jose pushing one of his agent's clients to the club? That we don't know. But again, like we didn't spend anywhere near the money we thought we'd need to get him, so we can't really complain about the fee. At least we can complain about the performances. Okay, Reguilon, the guy's a Real Madrid player who'd won the Europa League for Sevilla. I think everyone thinks he was a massive upgrade on what we had. We knew Rose was on his way out. So you can't really complain about that too. Bale, everyone was excited to see come back to see what he was going to do. Vinicius was top scorer in the Portuguese league, and we got him, again, practically for a pittance. So I don't think the quality of player is really the issue. I still think that it's getting them to function as a team. And he hasn't been able to do that. And I don't really know why, because you can look around the league and see that other teams have done that. Fulham have done that. Villa have done that. They've bought towards a system. If we were going to play the same way and have players for that system, then great. But yeah, I mean, like there is players at Spurs that I would like to see go, but I don't see them being replaced with the type of quality that many fans want to see. I don't think we're going to go out and buy Sabitzer, or I don't think Sabitzer's that good anyway, but like the Dybala or the Skriniar or whoever these players are that people seem to think are the top quality. I don't see Spurs doing that. We saw with Dombele, you buy someone for a lot of money who's clearly got a lot of talent, can't settle, you have a problem, right? We have to find a way to minimize those issues. If you can't do that, it doesn't matter who you're buying. It doesn't matter what you're buying. If they're not settled as humans, then they won't play football that well. I firmly believe that. Yeah. So it's tough. It really is tough. We do need to change a few things. Bale and Vinicius are going to leave anyway, almost certainly because of the loan. But again, who is it that's going to go? That's going to be a personal choice, and I guess we need to figure out which person is going to make those choices.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely. Levy's struggled to get rid of our fringe players. I think it'd be unlikely that both Dyer and Sanchez would leave, which I think a lot of Spurs fans would want. And then Toby's quite old, so we basically need to be looking at centre backs and centre midfield this summer. I think
the only way things are going to happen this summer is if other clubs, all clubs, are confident that the coronavirus pandemic is behind us, and we can go back to having full stadiums and in effect back to normal as normal can be.
Yeah,
I don't think that many clubs will have that confidence.
Well, it depends on the Euros a little bit, doesn't it? Because I think it depends on what happens there, and there's the Olympics as well. So depending on what happens in big stadium events like that, I think that will
It's true.
preempt a lot.
I just think that, yeah, look, it's crazy. Like if I was Levy, right? I mean, I don't want to be, but I want to be Hitchin. That's who I want to be. I'd do a better job than him. Like if I was Hitchin, I'd be thinking, look, there's a few players who will have 1 year left on their deal in the summer. So regardless of whatever the market's like because of coronavirus, they're the ones that will probably need to be moved on.
Mm.
We can't have a situation where they stay until the end of their contract, especially because most of them, I mean, probably it's just Lloris that we might be sad to see go, but most of them, yeah, we're not going to be that sad if they run their contract out. So let's get whatever money we can in now, and then hopefully use that wisely, even if it's just loans with an option to buy. I have a feeling that's what many clubs will be trying to do this summer, is shifting their deadwood with this idea that, yes, when things are back to normal next summer, then everyone can start paying the 10, 15, 20 millions with a bit of confidence. But right now, you need to get them out of the club or off your, because they're not even off your books, but just out of the club. There are people like, let's say, Lucas, who's got a contract until, I think, 2024. I would be thinking, right, Lucas, like as good as you are at certain things, I think I can probably find better. I'd be
Yeah.
happy to try. So if someone wants to go, I mean, it's what we did with Foyt, right? When Foyt was loaned out to Villarreal at the start of the year, we extended his contract by a year, knowing full well that the only way he was really going to go to Villarreal at the end of the year is if they had the money to do it, but
Yeah.
we couldn't run the risk of him running his contract down. So it was almost like, yeah, look, Foyt, you can go to Villarreal with our blessing, but you have to sign an extension to your deal. If you do that, then everyone wins. And I just think contract length is going to be such an important thing for all clubs if they're smart. Because right now, really, no one's got any money. We're not going to go out and spend 40, 50 million on a player because we just don't have the finances to do it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I've been told that his name is pronounced Dotty. So cheers for listening, cheers for the sub. Another question from TJ Crocombe, which is kind of based, I guess, upon what we're saying, is what do you think is going to be the ideal first 11 for the rest of the season? I think this one's fairly easy, isn't it? The team basically picks itself apart from who's playing centre midfield or that number 10 role.
I suppose. Yeah, I think I'd say that. I mean, we've got to be looking for the future a little bit now. Like we've got one massive game left, which is obviously the League Cup final. Everything else is to prepare us somewhat for next season, whether that means getting into Europe or whatever we can try and do. Obviously, Hugo will be in goal. I think it's Toby +1. I don't really mind if it's Sanchez. I'd be happy to see Rodon play because he really hasn't played that much.
Yeah.
Spent money on him and he's barely, I think it's like less than 500 minutes this season. It's not a lot. I'd like to see Toby and Rodon given a chance at least, but if not, then yeah, like Reguilon is going to be our left back going forward in the future. Our right back, if we're not going to stick with Doherty long term, then don't play him. Right? We've got to go with Aurier because he's probably the best option. Tanganga to me isn't a fullback. If we had a right back with the potential of Dennis Jerkin, who's obviously a left back, then I'd be all in on playing him and giving them some minutes. But I don't think Lavinia is that person, so I don't feel that strongly about playing him. In midfield, Højbjerg, Lo Celso, Dombele. Those are the three we've invested in. We need to see if it works. I don't really care who's the 10 or who's the 8 or whatever. Those three need to be in our first 11. I'd be happy to see Lo Celso playing almost as the right winger if we felt like it was necessary. But that has to happen. Kane, obviously, is the striker, and down the left, Son or Bergwijn. I think Bergwijn is one of those players I want to see play because as much as he hasn't scored this season, which is a terrible stat, he's one of those players to me that seems to know what to do with the ball. He's good at holding it up. He's good at finding teammates. He can play it short. He can play it long. He's fast. I think Bergwijn, the fall of Bergwijn since he missed those chances up at Anfield, is to me one of the weirdest storylines of the season, because I know we've seen Jose, blame players, and then Sanchez scores an own goal against West Ham and then barely plays for 2 months. It's happened a number of times this season where people have made high-profile mistakes and barely played. And Bergwijn is the one I'd like to see. He should have started on Thursday night. It would have much more sense to put him on the left where he actually likes playing instead of Lucas, who just never looks as good down the left-hand side. So yeah, anyone who's younger than Kane, outside of a goalkeeper, let's play some of them. Toby, and the goalie plus Kane and younger. That would suit me fine.
Yeah, I agree. Another comment from Dotty. He said he basically says we've got an elite strike force, but our defence is similar to. He said we've got a Rolls Royce strike force, and our defence is similar to a Lada. What's been really interesting this season is that Jose's either seemed to make us an attacking team where we've smashed loads of goals, or we've been a really good defensive team like against Man City, and we took those chances. We had very few against them or Arsenal. Defended, scored very clinically, but he's never. I don't think he's got the blend right all season where we've looked good at both, have we? Can you think of a single game where we've been really defensively solid and looked really good going forward either?
Maybe. I mean, we beat Leeds, but Leeds were pretty ropey at that time. That was a pretty decent performance. No,
Yeah.
if I'm honest, there's nothing that stands out as being.
I suppose Burnley recently, but they weren't great either, that game.
I mean, it's tough because, like any Spurs fan, when you play a lower, a team at the end of the table, you think you should win anyway, right? It's going to be those games against Everton or Arsenal, or the teams that are around us looking to do what we want to do and dominating those games, because that's what we used to do. We used to dominate teams around us. I don't know this season. I still don't really understand why we seem so keen to have our fullbacks start high up the pitch.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us play almost a flat back four, but high up the pitch. Does that make sense? Like where they're in a line, right? You've got Beyond on the left and Aurier down the right, and you've got two centre halves, and the other six can move forward and can be your width and can make the runs from midfield and do the attacking. But first and foremost, you have a back four whose job is to defend. You look at the Man United teams of old where, Gary Neville was a defender first, but would often come up in attack and put crosses in or work well with Beckham to make that happen. I don't know why we're not asking that of Aurier. Aurier shouldn't be our main outlet down the right. He should be an accessory.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like we're missing. I don't want. I don't really want a Harry Redknapp. Like you put your player here and you just let them go. But we have to have some idea of what we want to do. But defenders have to defend. Right? Not asking Højbjerg to drop and be a third centre half like we did with Dyer when he was in the team. So under Poch, I mean, we're asking Højbjerg to sit in midfield. And so that way you can't just leave two centre halves to do the defending, asking your fullbacks to bomb forward. That is a recipe for disaster. I think we've seen it not just with Jose, but also with Poch towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
End of his stay at Spurs. But it's frustrating because I think that we do have the minerals to create something decent, more than decent. But for whatever reason, whether it's attacking with the wrong players or defending in the wrong areas or defending too deep and then basically hoping for 30-yard rockets from Son or Kane to score, whatever that balance is, we've never found it.
Yeah, great. Some more comments. I'm surprised no one's commented on my lockdown hair yet, because I'm looking at myself going, oh my god, like these bits need a cut so bad. Anyway. Sean, good old Sean Willisey, all the way from Canada. He said it's very sad how the players have not managed to turn up for two games. And this is the biggest problem, is that it really felt like the players just didn't turn up. And if you can't turn up for Arsenal and you can't turn up for like a must-win European tie, you've really got to start worrying. So his question really is, do you think that they'll turn around tomorrow? And having listened to Kane's sort of social media, not listened, but seen Kane's social media comments today, he's come out and basically said it's not acceptable and that they need to atone from that performance. Do you think we're going to see a reaction against Villa tomorrow?
If Lamella plays, maybe. He's bad.
He's suspended, isn't he?
Oh my gosh. I want to say yes. I do want to say yes.
Yeah.
But where are you going to see it? Højbjerg, maybe. Who else? Yeah, I don't know. Like, we're not going to press with any intensity because we don't really do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see us just organised would be a start. But this idea of playing off playing off teams and allowing them the ball, even though Villa won't have Grealish, they're
Mm.
still good enough to hurt you. So
Is he definitely not playing tomorrow? Because I know he's been training.
yeah, I did read that he was definitely out. They weren't going to risk him, and they just think
Against
that
Spurs.
yeah. Well, I think they just think that with the international break coming up,
Mm.
obviously, there's no point really pushing it. He might be on the bench, but I don't think he'll start.
Yeah.
But Villa seem quite keen to keep him for the games after the international break, which I guess helps us. But
Mm.
yeah, it's weird. Like we don't engage players at any level really. We don't try and stop teams, and if we do, it's far too late. They're 25, 30 yards from goal, and
Mm.
Premier League players, even the bad ones, if you give them time, 25, 30 yards from goal, they have the quality to hurt you. They
Yeah.
do. And so we just need to, okay, look, if we're gonna sit deep, then we need to kind of engage 35 yards, 40 yards from our own goal. Make sure it's their defenders that are allowed the ball. Kind of what we see other teams do to us, right? We see other teams that Sanchez have the ball all the time, right? Yeah, Sanchez, you bring the ball forward because they know, as do we, that he's not really got it in his locker to hurt them. So if we were a bit smarter about that, then fair enough. That would be something. If we want to play on the front foot, then that means the whole team pushes up, and we say the only way to get passes is if you knock it over the back. And we've got Sanchez and Aurier and Reguilon who have the pace to get there.
Mm.
I mean, I know that people say that Toby's lost a few yards, but he was never the fastest. But he's smart, so he doesn't need that pace. You could have that back four, and that would function too. But we just have to decide what we want to do and pick a team to do it. If you want to play on the counter, you need pace, right? You do that, and pace in all areas as much as possible. It's not just Kane +2 because Son probably won't play. So it would be Kane, Bergwijn, and Lucas. You'd think as the three paciest players. That might work, but then you'd also need to have the pace in fullbacks. You can't expect it to happen if you're only playing two or three attackers. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Villa's form, it's not great. They go 6 games back. They drew against Brighton 0-0. I mean, Brighton are kind of indifferent at the moment. They're playing quite well, but not getting results. And then they lost to Leicester at home 2-1. And then they beat Leeds. Lost to Sheffield United. That was the big surprise. Sheffield United, you can't buy a win, and they managed to. And then they drew with Wolves and drew with Newcastle. So, really, their form is pretty poor. And we're probably quite glad to be playing them now rather than when this game was originally supposed to be played, aren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, I realise that Villa are close to us in the table, but both teams are pretty ropey right now. Neither side has shown much form recently. They don't have their best player. You'd have to think it's a pretty good time to be playing a team. They're out of form and their best player can't play.
Yeah. At the end of the day, Jack Grealish he's contributed 6 goals and 10 assists this season, and I think the next nearest assist is John McGinn. And John McGinn's a decent player, but he's not. He doesn't play the same role anywhere near what Grealish does. Grealish is always demanding the ball. He's always offering. He's involved in nearly everything attacking wise, isn't he? And Ollie Watkins got a lot of goals. El Ghazi's got 6, which is not bad. So they've got some decent players up front. But you do think that without Grealish, that's probably why they're struggling, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Villa are a average team with a bit of stardust, but they're hardworking and they're functional. I mean, they all know their job. They haven't changed their formation for the entire season. That Matty Cash will be right back and Matt Targett will be left back. It's probably going to be Konsa and Mings at centre half if they're fit. So you do know what you're going to get with Villa. That they don't play a certain style. It's not as if they're a high press team or a counter-attacking team. They just play football and they have a solid 11 that know their jobs. And because they've got a decent striker this season and a decent attacking midfielder, what's to say that Grealish and Watkins aren't there, Kane and Son, right? I mean, take those two out, where would they be? So, yeah, it's not an easy game because, even Villa Park last season, we were pretty lucky to get the victory there. I don't think we need to be worrying too much about them. We need to be focusing on getting our 11 right. I think if we get our 11 right, we've got individual quality to win the game. But if we don't, and if the attitude isn't there again, then Villa are more than capable of taking advantage. And it'd be like the Brighton game, right? Brighton get a goal, we never look like scoring, game over. Villa could easily do that tomorrow. So it's a testing game, but one I still believe we can win handily if we really put our minds to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. A few more comments. Scott Murray Burrows. Isn't anyone having a frank conversation with the team? Sometimes I worry that the language barrier between so many players sometimes means the important messages are muddled from coach to player. I mean, if you listen to Jose's post-match conferences, like it's pretty muddled then, isn't it? To be honest. So I don't know. I mean, you talked earlier about the cliques in there, the French. They all have a decent level of English, I think, apart from Lamella, who after 7 years still can't speak English. But you know what I mean? There's always sort of little language cliques and stuff, isn't it? Because even with him, you've got Celso, you had Gazaniga, and then you've got some Spanish speakers in Reggie and things like that. So there probably are little cliques developed around those sort of lines.
I mean, like if I take me for example, right? Like I live in Austria. I would say a large portion of my friends are native English speakers. You kind of gravitate towards each other so you can talk about the things you miss more than anything.
Yeah.
And so it's completely logical. I think the difference is if you take Poch's squad, right? There were plenty of English players, and you had Belgians who I love Belgium, so this might come out wrong. Belgians are aware of their place, right? They don't have an idea that their country is this massive superpower, right?
Yeah.
They've all grown up learning English and French. They speak Dutch already, so like being in a multicultural, multilingual society is quite normal for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you look at again, like I don't think the French players or French-speaking players have grown up with that. It's something that they're doing for their job. So in certain situations they want it, but the rest of the time, I mean, I don't speak German at home. So
no.
I think that's part of it, and the same would be true of the Spanish speakers, right? Like it makes sense for Reguilon and Lo Celso and Lamella and Gazaniga to all be mates because they share a language, right? Or they share a favorite drink, whatever it is. And I just feel that the main foreign personalities that we had under Poch were much more aware of able to handle a multicultural environment than maybe the ones that we have now are. That's not necessarily a dig at the ones we have. It's just that's life, right? Like you look at Højbjerg, right? He's Danish, so he's probably grown up with this idea. Like you learn German because he played for Bayern. You learned English probably through school. His mother, I think, is French, so he speaks fluent French. Like he's the type of person that would get this, right? Would understand you need to be different with different people, right? You look at Dyer, Portuguese, shares the language with the manager. He will understand two cultures. He will have a better understanding of what it means to be Spanish than Harry Winks would, right? Even if Harry Winks has a Spanish grandma or whatever it is, Harry Winks comes from Hemel Hempstead. His world is Hemel Hempstead, right? So, and that's not to disparage Hemel Hempstead. It's just that's the fact of life. Like I didn't know foreigners growing up in Harlow. Like your world is very much what you're used to. I just think that unless the dominant character in the dressing room is someone who understands that you need to be like together as a group as much as possible, and you will have a situation where we meet together to play football for half a day, and then we go off and do our own things. And you don't see like people like Wimmer and Son who became best friends because they shared a language, right? I think.
But I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier. It does feel a little bit like maybe the morale within the team is maybe missing a little bit under Jose, and Dele is obviously a really key part of that squad. He's always in with the jokes, and he always seems to be kind of like friends with most of the players. So I do think that there's probably an element of like the way he's been treated might have affected people. We've had another comment from the last Emperor who says, "Sell Dele Alli." So here's a final question to you, HG, before we wrap things up. This summer, if we have to sell one of our star players, who would you sell? We've kind of commented on this before, but things seem to be heavily shifting. So I'll give you a choice of Son, Kane, or Dele.
Based completely on contract situation, Son.
Oh.
Pretty certain Son is out of contract next summer, 2022.
Yeah.
Wrong. But for that reason only, like he joins those other players like Lloris and Aurier. Is like if I'm Son, as awful as this sounds, if I'm Son, there's no way I am signing my last major contract to play for Spurs,
Not at
right?
the moment. Not at the
No.
moment.
And so, as much as I would love to be in a situation to say, look, we want to keep you. Obviously, we want to keep you. You've been a great player for us. It won't be enough. It will be promises, right?
Mm.
So you can imagine that there are going to be big teams around Europe, maybe even within England, who might think, son, we'd love to have him, right? I could see personally that Son might be thinking, look, okay, look, if Mbappe leaves PSG, Poch is there, that fits, right? He basically just takes that role. Draxler's out of contract. There's a whole. He could easily go to PSG. The thing that would make me wary if I'm Son about that is that there's no guarantee Poch is going to stay at PSG.
Mm.
So wherever Son decides to go, he's going to have to be aware that that's it. This is my last major contract. Again, if I'm Son, I probably want to leave on a Bosman. I'll stay another season. I'll see what happens. I'll see if things improve. I'll have given 6 or 7 years by that point. You can't ask fairer than that. But from a club perspective, from the three you gave me, Son is the one that I would be looking. If I had to, I'd be looking to sell him. As much as I love him, as I don't want him to go, from a club perspective, we can't have another Eriksen situation. We can't.
No. There's a lot of things happening at the club now that really feel like it's very negative on all angles, isn't it? There's a lot of things that need to happen and that could go really badly. And it's amazing when the football and all other hope is lost. Like, you know what I mean? A lot of people were pinning their hopes on maybe Europa League, and whilst it was sort of an outside shot, I think just like the performances in the last 2 games have just blown any illusions that we might turn things around again. It's like, it's a tough time. But listen, Cheeseheads, there's always another game, and there's always another season, is what I would say. And we've got a cup final to play. There's an outside shot we're going to beat Man City. They might not turn up that day, and we might. So there's always things to be hopeful about. And on that note, HG, give me a score prediction for tomorrow. Are you confident?
No, I'm not confident. I am confident that we won't lose.
Okay.
So let's go with a nice, boring and simple 1-1.
Like it. I'm going to go with a 4-0. We're going to get back to smashing 4 goals and having a watertight defence. Just before the
upset though if we win 4-0 after having those 2 results and then we go out and smash Villa away from home. That would make you upset, wouldn't it?
Well, this is the thing. Is that if we pull out a performance tomorrow, you're just like, why could you not have done this in the last week? Why could you have not done this last weekend in a game that was massive? Why could you not have done it on Thursday? So yeah, it's difficult, and I think that's the thing with inconsistency, isn't it? We have a good run where we were scoring goals and looking all right, and then all of a sudden it just falls off a cliff edge. You've got Lloris coming out and saying things. You've got Jose being super sad. You're just like, where has this come from? Everything was great last week. So it's like, it's been a difficult week for Spurs fans. So I'm just trying to end on a positive note. So yeah, 4-0 tomorrow. We're going to do it. Right. Cheeseheads, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a like and chuck in some comments, because it really helps with the exposure of the pod and stuff. And if you've missed the pods this week, we had a really good one post-match. A lot of passion shown from the caller, et al., and Bren and Seb and David. There you go. I've remembered all the names. That's good for me. Right. Listen to all those, and don't forget to subscribe to all our social medias, Twitter, etc., all that stuff. And HG, thanks for joining, as always.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
And I'll speak to you tomorrow night where we review the Villa game. Hopefully we'll win.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Or thumbs pressed, as they say here in Korea.
Press those thumbs. Cheers, cheeseheads.